But I guess I'll just get a little bit of my background quickly, and then I want to show you a couple of videos to start off that are really short, because I think you might find them useful. And it's always nice when somebody who's a professional can break something down and explain it really carefully. So I guess my background in school choice, I was a principal at St. Paul the Apostle in Davenport when the tax credit bill got passed. And I remember trying to really understand what this was and how do you sell tax. You're selling tax credits, what are you doing, this, that, or the other thing, working through that. And so I started to see the consequences of that about the last year I was principal. When I became superintendent, that's when I really kind of got baptized by fire and different things there. So obviously that gave us an opportunity to work a lot more with the state legislatures, but it also put you at a lot more national meetings where these topics came up, and they got to go to some other trainings at different times that really took us through a lot of different programs. And you heard a lot about different things from different states. And so there's a wide range of school choice issues and tools that can be out there. But we're obviously pretty focused on the tax credit approach. We can talk a little bit about education savings accounts, and I can explain or answer questions or anything like that you want to. But that's really not our priority right now. And I can give a little bit of political landscape on that if you want me to, whenever. But the reason I wanted to do this first slide here and hit a couple of these things is because when I was at that meeting, Preston just kind of asked how you felt. You know, I don't remember if I said 1 to 3 or raise your hand, and it was a very, kind of a lukewarm, timid thing. And that's where I understand where you're coming from. Because you got a ton of things on your plates. This is one more. None of us probably got into education because we were terribly interested in being involved in politics, even though that's a big part of our job. It's local. And so there's just a lot to learn and to deal with. So my goal today in doing this was kind of give you an overview, give you the real dirty facts of what it is, what works, typically what people criticize you for, and what are some of the counter arguments, and then provide you with some practical tools that you can do. So there's a couple things I'm going to ask you to do sometime in the coming months out of this, but I'm also trying to set you up with all the things to make that a lot easier to do, okay? But any questions before we start? So I thought the very first one is, well, what is school choice? And so I want you to see this, and then I'll explain a couple of things, and it might, oh no. This is what happens when somebody's way smarter than me sets this all up. So can I get to, this is supposed to link automatically to
Yep.
And it says I can't get a server.
Well, here's a suggestion, here's something from Iowa Catholic Conference.
Okay. So what we've seen, I'll hit a little bit historical, and then I'll try and talk about some of the school choice things and get into what the church talks about. So the tax credit program started 12 years ago. All right, I said that already, that I was basically finishing up being a principal and moving into superintendent. And so that really was our first taste, and quite frankly, it's kind of, we struck lightning pretty easily on that program. It was kind of like, I don't think anybody knew exactly what was going on anywhere. It was 2.5 million, the Democrats and the Republicans both kind of supported it, and we got through. And then we had to figure out how to set up all the STOs. And when I say STO, that's a student tuition organization, same as ours, but we call ours a CTO, Catholic Tuition Organization. So you get those tax credits in, right, so the state gives us that. So if they give us $100 in tax credits, and we sell those to somebody, how many scholarship dollars do we have to give out? All right, there's one answer, 65.
65%.
Okay. So if we sold $100 worth, and we have 65% tax credit, we only use 65 of our tax credit dollars. So we got another 35 on top. So actually, when we sold them all, we get to 135. So there's one little nice thing about it, right? That in other words, your benefit as a taxpayer in the state of Iowa only is that you don't have to pay that tax. It's a credit. It's not a deduction. So it goes away. So instead, in essence, you get to put 65 cents of that dollar where you want. And I like Catholic school, so I'm going to put it there. So that's one of the good advantages. And historically, we've done pretty good at selling those overall. There's only been once or twice that we weren't able to get them So the state gives them to us, we split them out amongst the STOs. Do you know how we split those out?
Isn't it based on each student, on a 12?
What percentage of the total private school population that exists? So who makes up the majority of the private schools in the state of Iowa? Four Dallasons, right? So Dubuque is the biggest by far, 8 to 10,000 kids. Sioux City and Des Moines are really close, right around 6,000, and Davenport's small, so 4. Okay. Then who else is out there? Okay. They don't qualify.
Lutheran.
Lutheran are organized into East and West, so we do work with them. Christian Reformed, so typically Pella, Northwest Iowa, right? And then we have a few odds and ends, okay? Harishi down there and
Fairfield.
We got some private schools in Davenport, those sorts of things. So that's really kind of the makeup. Goes out, we sell them, we get the money, it's delayed a year, right? And then we start giving that out to the families. So who sets the criteria in giving out the money?
Each board.
Okay, legislation. So what does the legislation tell us?
Income guidelines.
Okay, so what is that?
The ratio of the number in the family and income, net income,
So you're generally right.
Poverty rate.
and
So
the
another-
poverty rate.
Right, so the federal government every year puts out a poverty rate, all right? In the state of Iowa, for the longest time, it was a family of 4 times 300, so 3 times bigger than the federal poverty you could qualify, all right? Just this year was the first year that it could go to 400% of poverty. And so one of the slides we see in a little bit will show you those dollar amounts to give you an idea of where they're going, okay? Then that's one criteria. What other criteria do we use? Okay, why is the tuition rate important?
Because you've got to figure out percentages based on the tuition rates.
Okay, so it's not, it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal here, but in Sioux City, in my experience, we had a little bit of an arms race. If I raise my tuition higher than everybody else, my percentage, my need goes up. Okay, so you're much better Catholics, right? You don't do that to me. But in other words, that's a part of it, right? And then how else do you think we decide to give out the money? Or who do we send that to?
Third party vendor.
So we send it to FAIR, all right? So in other words, there's 3 or 4 major companies in the country that do this. FAIR is one. Oh, I forgot the other one out of Ohio that we used. It got bought up.
They got bought up by fax.
Fax bought them, and then there was, the other one. Doesn't matter. So those companies do that, and then when they bring it in, each one of them has a similar formula, but there's different things in there. So for example, how much your mortgage is, okay, to a certain extent, there's usually stoppers on that, on the top and the bottom, how much that can affect. Because they say, hey, a normal family with $80,000 should probably own a house between $160,000 and $250,000, and so we'll give you credit for that. So there you go, that makes you needy. You wrote in there that your grandmother's dependent and lives in the house and is not working. We'll give you an extra credit for that. All of these sorts of things, right? Now, what things do you think they don't count? Any guesses? See, that comes up pretty quick. So in other words, there's definitely usually limits if they at all consider credit card debt. Okay. There's another one that people think of and they're often surprised that it doesn't. Child support definitely, but that's more like a revenue, if you see what I'm saying. So that's like a paycheck. Medical they will usually consider if it's verified. College tuition is usually not considered. Okay. So you may see that sometimes somebody comes in, well, I'm paying this, this, and this, and I got this in college. You know what, if we allowed that and your kids go, you could get a strange situation where my kid's going to Notre Dame, she doesn't give out much tuition assistance, I'm paying the full fare, and all of a sudden now, it's unlikely they'd meet that first criteria from the state, but you'd be giving them assistance. So there's definitely limits and things they put in there. So I just tell you that because you hear these questions, right? And it's kind of hard, well, how the hell does that happen, or why, and this and that, and the other thing. those are some of the criteria that go in there, and really very few of us ever dig that far into the dirt. But those are the sorts of things that if you were calling Jeannie Wells or somebody at the Catholic Schools office, they'd have to probably go back and find out about why somebody didn't qualify. Okay. All right. So I just want to kind of give you those basic things and make sure we're on the same page as we're moving forward. Do you have any other questions about how the state gives out the tax credits, why they're arranged in a certain way, any of those other things about the real basics? Okay, so let's go here. So the second thing, and I got a handout here, so open up your folders, and I think you're going to have something that has these quotes on them. I think it's the first one on the left. And this PowerPoint is in there if you want to write any notes down, so you've got it. The second thing that a lot of times happens is people, in my opinion, are really reticent about standing up and saying, hey, we should get these tax credits, or hey, the state should support us. Okay? When I sent out some things supporting school choice, I had a parent, I sent a letter out to all of our parents on one of the action words. And I had a parent come back and it was just kind of a something, something, something. Shouldn't be mixing school and church and state. Okay? Or this isn't the Catholic Church's standard. So one thing I want you to be very clear on, the Catholic Church has been very clear on where we stand on school choice. And it actually happened back in the 1960s. So Second Vatican Council, the Declaration on Christian Education, which you don't have the complete version, trust me, but I pulled out the highlights for you to see, are some of these statements here. So they're saying, in fulfilling the educational role, the church is eager to employ all suitable aids, is concerned especially about those which are her very own. And then they're going on to say, the parents are the primary and inalienable right and duty to educate. So we've all heard that multiple times, right? But their children must enjoy true liberty in their choice of schools. Therefore, the public power, the state, the government, has the obligation to protect and defend the rights of the citizens and is concerned for distributive justice that public subsidies are paid out in such a way that parents are truly free to choose. Okay, that's in that middle section there. And so I give this to you because, quite honestly, these are the types of documents that guide the USCCB, the United States Council of Catholic Bishops, and quite frankly our own bishops. Because at one point in all of this, we had to kind of sit down and really educate our own bishops on what does the church teach on these things. So we pulled out these exact same documents so they would know. I share them with you because I want you to be very comfortable in understanding the church has a very clear stance on this. Okay? And that it is in support that we should have that liberty to do it. One thing that's kind of important around school choice that I've come to realize over time, it's very much about mindsets. Okay? If you go to some European countries, it is absolutely normal that basically the state is subsidizing 70-80% of the school's budget, and it's a religious school. Okay? Here, people would be like, why don't I pay for your country club membership too? Right? Because I've seen that text sent out. All right, so in other words, it very much is about mindset. And so when we continue to look at the bigger school choice things, it is a lot about forming your own mindset and your parents' mindsets as they move forward. So any reactions to this, or do you ever know the church had to really ever come out with anything on this, or do you have questions about why the church would teach these things? Why do you think the church is pushing for this stance?
I would like to see CTO put together a flyer that would have this information in it, because I think that could be very valuable in conversations, and also very valuable to share and to talk to people.
So why do you think it'd be valuable?
Because I think people need to know where the church stands, and that, we have such a wide variety of families anymore from so many different cultures and socioeconomic reassuring to know. For others, I think it would maybe make them think a little bit deeper.
So what this does many times is it starts to make it a little bit more into it's a social issue. It's also a moral issue. So in other words, you know, there's a great deal of conversation about tolerance, and I understand that. But there's also tolerance for those who want to have religious views. And quite frankly, one of the precepts of school choice is the following. Everyone should have choice. But who has choice right now?
People with money.
Who?
With money.
People with money. In other words, has the person with $1 million income ever been restricted on where they could have school choice? Because what do they do?
And what were they?
Right. What do people ask for real estate agents?
Good schools.
How are the schools here?
Mhm.
Okay, so school choice exists, guys. It's just we're trying to change it. So right now, the wealthy have school choice. All right. We can have homeschoolers. Okay. But quite frankly, and some people who are able to afford our tuition can do that. But those individuals who usually end up with the least amount of choice are those with the least amount of dollars. Okay. So that's why having a program tied to those financial things is really a good program in my mind. And I think you're seeing the outcomes of that. I know I am at Dowling, because it's gone from about 10 to 12% minority up to 27%. And there's a tight correlation between that and the income. So maybe we could talk to them about that to make sure they understand, but I just kind of want to hit those basics there. Any other questions on this before we move on? Okay, so kind of jumping around here. So what were we seeing prior to the CTO program? Across the state, we were seeing some pretty big enrollment declines. We weren't seeing the diversity that we're seeing in Des Moines. I mean, this is Health Holy Family. Your school is very different than it would have been 15 years ago. I suspect you're starting to see changes. I know you are. I know you are. I don't know a complete history of your school, but I know it's very diverse now. So we're starting to see those things really come around. So that's somewhere good. And quite frankly, I will tell you, it was a lot more frightening back then before these programs came in, because you were seeing a lot more schools close. Okay. These are some of the numbers I wanted you to realize, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. We had 41,000 students back about 20 years ago. We've got about a 9,000 student decrease. Most of that decrease took place before the program started. It was like this, going down. And then basically we've had a pretty much leveling off with the creation of the CTO program. All right? Some places have seen growth. We're fortunate to be in Des Moines, because there's a lot more potential for growth here than most anywhere else in the state. But it's been a stabilizing factor, and we think that's a good thing. Here's some things that we put in, and they're all about Dowling, but I want to share these with you because I think this could be something we talk about in the regional program, but also just that I want to explain the backstory here and what happened. And some of you know this already. So in 2006 to 7, the program started. We were right at 1,200 students. Today we're at 1,415 actually. Our diversity was 11%. This is all from last year. Now it's at 27%. All right? And our starting salary is at $27,000, and now it's at $44,000. So the CTO happened, and a couple of other things happened. It was good fortune. All right? So in other words, there was basically a decision made that the business model of Dowling was broken, and it wasn't going to work, and that the tuition was going to have to go up significantly, and it did. So I've seen the tuition increases over about 7 years, 9, 12, 10, 9. It was aggressive. All right? So what do you expect to happen to the population of the school?
Go down.
Right. We know the opposite's true. So what happened? 2 things happened. 3 things really happened. one CTO came online. They were lucky. Okay. 2, they grew the foundation. Same thing, tuition assistance. That was hard work. All right. 3, they told the people what was happening. There was a business plan put together to say, for the next 5 years, you're going to see big increases. But here's what we're doing. We're going to do tuition assistance. We're going to work with you. We're going to do these things. Okay? So there may have been a decrease in that first year, but with that persistent message, it really helped you grow. You see all of this? This is because of the increase in tuition assistance from the tax credit program and the foundation.
Dan, do you know what the percentage difference is of public school students attending Dowling, kids coming from public schools going into Dowling for those?
So our typical class is 350. Lately, it's been a little bit bigger. And typically, we have 40, 45 to 60 public school students out of that. So it's 14%. Actually, now I think about it. Because 86% come
I
from.
think Matt said 85% come from the Catholic schools.
Right. So 14, 15.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and then with the tuition going up, the revenues went up, the salaries went up. Okay. So part of this is school choice, part of this is regional. You see what I'm saying? Questions here? Okay, so I've hit on some of these things. I think you know we started at $2.5 million and now we're at 15. We're shooting to be at 25 million in 2 years. All right? I'll talk more about that later. If you can see these numbers or you can read them on that paper, these would be good to know. All right? And I don't know if we always have the right number of people in here, but basically we're going from 49,000 in the old one to about 114. That's a family of 6, if I'm counting right. 7. Okay? Here's the thing I want you to take away from that. Look at this year. So you got a family of 2 that makes $67,000, so that's a parent and a child. All right? They can qualify. All right? 3, 85, 4, 103. So what's good about that?
We're middle class.
You're covering a lot of people.
Covering a lot of people. What's bad about that?
Cover a lot of people.
You took the pot didn't grow. Okay? And so it got thinned out. We used to call it, we feather it out, right? And then you had people who were getting something or not getting as much, and now they don't want to come back to the door. So that's a problem. And we got a little bit of a solution coming in the $300,000 increase we'll see next year from the tax credit sales, assuming all goes well, right? But overall, what did we learn there? If you're going to expand the population, you better make sure the dollars are there, or don't expand the population.
Right.
Yeah, they got a cart for the horse.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So we know that. Oh, sorry. But look at this. We're talking all the way up to 138 on the family of 6, 156. That's a lot of people down in Catholic. I know that's a lot of people down in Catholic. All right? So the good thing is, what we talk about with our higher tuition, and if yours goes up, I think you would be encountering the same thing, is the fact that really that bottom half of the middle class. I propose that with the diversity, and again, there's a pretty close correlation in socioeconomics that group, we're taking care of a lot of their needs. I usually say our bottom third are getting a lot of assistance. It's usually that bottom half of the middle class that are feeling the hard rub. These are the people whose cars are probably 6 to 7 years old, all right, but they still want to kind of take a vacation. They live in a nice neighborhood, all right. They're not going to starve, but they're making that decision between, do we want to take that vacation or do we want to send our kids to Dowling? And it goes both ways. You're seeing it either to the same amount or a lesser amount, depending on the number of kids in the building. Okay? So that's the good thing. We can get assistance there. We just got to get the dollars that will match it. All right? This is just so you know, because people may ask you things like this. Used to be about 1,000 they're getting it. We're up to about 1,500. This is the whole diocese. So that's everybody. But just some general background information for you. Questions? Yeah.
this might sound like a lot of work, but would it be possible to run numbers at the beginning for like take CTO from this year and all those families that are considering Dowling so that they would know a hypothetical number plus the Dowling match going into their 8th grade year? And the only reason I say that because you brought up the point that I know for a fact that has happened at Christ the King, and some of our parents are very vocal about it, you know, when people say, well, I can't afford Dowling. And some of our parents will say, well, clearly you've already made a decision because you spent it out. And it's exactly true. I mean, they went in knowing like, hey, next year, I'm not paying any tuition, I might as well put it into a car payment.
So they'll either leave at 5th or 6th grade from your school,
Or
or they'll decide they'll go to 8th and they're not coming to us. Or there might even be some that look at kindergarten and say, well, if I can't finish it down, why am I even starting? Yeah, we need to do a much better job at communicating that. I'm not gonna go into the whole thing, but we can give scenarios.
Right.
Every time we give a scenario, we run that danger of, well, you said, you know what I mean? Well, yeah, that person wasn't getting a retirement from the military, you know what I mean, whatever it may be, those sorts of things. So, yeah, we're definitely trying to address the 5th grade issue, is what I call it.
Right.
And get more communications and meetings. So we're looking at some pilot things and getting some new materials created. It's a good question. It's a legitimate one. Others? Yeah.
I gotta take off here shortly, but the one thing that somebody said, why it was Henderson,
Yeah, Jeff.
starting to sell the idea, we've gotta make sure that the public school people don't see it as us versus them.
Okay.
I've got 2 kids that teach in public schools, they always hated CTO, when I told them, we don't want your money, we want this to be funded separately. We support you getting 3%.
Right.
Allowable growth. We're all in favor, we care about kids.
Right.
Yes, the state needs to give you 3%, we're asking that in a different way, they
Right.
have us money.
So if you've ever, I don't know how much of us pay attention, if we can get the internet to work, I'll show it to you. But we pretty much, I can't think of a time when we've ever attacked the public schools.
There's the perception, but no, I don't know that happening, but the perception.
And if you have some questions around this area, like questions you think you're gonna be asked or you've been asked, be happy to throw them out at me and I'll see if I can give you a response on those, but yeah. No, and that's one of the things that we try and portray with the public schools. It hasn't been responded in that way, but.
Teachers, you need to give up on that.
Yeah.
But
And you divide it into
individuals
different
that
groups.
make up public school parents, they're reasonable, most.
Most. Okay, unmet need. So have you heard us talk about unmet need before? Have you ever heard that term? You have? Okay. So when your family sends something to FAIR, it comes back as a report. Now, I'm not sure you see this part of the report, but they'll say, we recommend you giving this, okay? And then somebody's got to make a decision how much they're going to actually get. And with that, from the amount they recommend, there's probably going to be an unmet need, or the difference between what they actually get and what was recommended is called the unmet need. So I got that information from my students, and we have it here for the diocese. And so we looked at that last year. We said there's over $600,000 of people in the building we didn't meet the need they told us they deserve. Okay. So at times I get asked, what's that mean? How can they have unmet need if they're not there? So for our families, what that means is those are the kids getting off the DART bus at 7 a.m. because the family can't afford a car. And they're coming from the east side of town. And everybody knows school doesn't start till 8, right? So that's the only way they can get there. Those are the kids that I sit down with at lunch and they tell me, I can't do activities. I'm like, why? Because I work at Burger King to help pay part of my tuition. My story is, I had to pay my high school tuition at a Catholic school, but it didn't keep me from playing football. All right. So those are the kinds of things we mean by that. Then here, this is the whole diocese. You can see it's going up. And it's probably because our population is changing. Overall, we are probably getting needier people in, which I see as being a big part of our mission. Okay?
Is the unmet need, when families submit this, do they submit like what they think that they need? Or is the unmet need from what they've decided to what they're actually given? Like what FAIR has decided to
It's
what?
FAIR's decision, it's not the family.
Okay.
No, I have never seen a formula say, what do you think you need from one of the companies?
Okay.
Well, so it is on the application,
Is it?
but I asked Jean that same question.
Yeah.
Because, so for example, like if our tuition's $32.50, some families will put, my need is $32.50. But some might put $1,000. And my thing is like, I said, gosh, does that make, she said that, really that number makes no difference. The need's all based on the calculations that they put in the system.
Okay.
So you could put 5,000 and it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Good questions. All right. So who do we partner with and who does these sorts of things? Okay. Ever heard of IOAs before? Alliance for Choice in Education. That's a membership organization. Biggest members of the 4 dioceses. All right. And you've got the Lutherans, Christians, and all of those other SDOs typically have members. All right. Their efforts are funded by those members. So when you go up to the rally on the Hill, that's one of their events. They're the ones paying for the microphones, you know, and those sorts of things. All right. And that's run by Trish Wilger from Davenport. This is a new group, Iowans for School Choice. All right. So are you aware we've been working on getting business leaders involved? Okay. So we've had a meeting in April. I talked about this a little bit. We had another one in August. We're having a second meeting in Council Bluffs with some business leaders. We're having some meetings in, I hope we're having some meetings in Cedar Rapids soon, and Dubuque, and then eventually Davenport down the road. Okay? So we've got about 20 business leaders who've agreed to come on board and say, you need something from us, you need a phone call, you need a visit, you need to go to a meeting, we'll try and help you there with those things. Okay? So this group's getting going. All right? Iowa Association for Christian Schools, another group that works on these things. They work with most of the Christian schools, not all. Beyond that, I don't know their politics. There's a few other groups that are much more political to get involved in these things. And most of those groups have a lobbyist on the Hill, either part-time or full-time. Okay? Questions about them? Okay, so what does this get us? So we've been talking about the legislative priority this year is 25 million. All right? And so this is our best estimate. And I'm sorry, this year we're still at the 13 million mark, right? I'm doing my math right, 3.3 million. Next year we'll be at that 15 million, so it'll be about a 300,000 increase, so it'll be 3.6. So why the 25? Okay, so if you do the $25 million in the tax credits, you're almost doubling the tuition assistance you have available. All right. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you get that in one fell swoop. But if you don't ask, you won't get it. All right. So those are kind of the goals that we're breaking down. We think if we get that 20 million mark, and I'm only going to speak for the moment because that's the only place I've been doing the math, it would make a significant difference. Okay. But I think it would help. Obviously, it's going to help everyone if they can have those dollars. All right. Questions about the dollar amounts, time frames, why not?
Is there a worry that if we hit that mark that we won't be able to hit that mark? You know what I mean? Like,
So you're asking if we hit that, will we be able to sell all the tax credits? Good problem to have. I'm always looking for good problems. So in other words, we already do have a group talking about how do we make sure that we keep everybody moving forward. But quite frankly, that's a risk worth taking. I mean, everything's always a risk. The fact is we haven't sold the tax credits every single year. We've sold the vast majority. But I think they'd also understand sometimes it takes a little time to build up for themselves. Okay. Just some time frames, if you know anything about these. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
So if it's for July 2021, that's the 2021-22 school year where it would be raised?
Some kind of increase would happen.
And if that's when it's raised, would it not then be distributed until the 22-23 school
You are
year?
accurate. Yeah. You see how these things start to take a long time, and so you gotta start pushing on a very steady basis. So we did some April meetings. In the spring, we were hoping to get 17 million. We ended up to 15, okay? We said 20, you see this 20 million in there? But if you ask for 20, you're not gonna get 20. Ask for 25, maybe you'll get 20. So those situations, we're working on the plan now. We're getting things scheduled with legislators to meet with. We're hopeful to be in the governor's budget. We'll see how that goes. That'd be a good step forward. And then we'll get into the session, and that's when the real work will start. Session goes from January supposedly to April. This year it probably will, because next year's an election year, so they want to get done and get out of there. Okay, so they can go on with things, so not as much typically gets done in these sessions. The nice thing about this program, it's not a new bill, guys. This is a standing appropriations bill. It's changing the number. And usually it's in with a lot of other things, so it's not a big standalone. Who knows what an action order is? Okay. Have you seen many in the last 4 years? Okay. So one of the things we want to do is make sure they get out and send those, but those things typically come out in the time frame that those decisions are getting made. And a lot of times they're at the end of the session. Okay? Okay, so today was supposed to be a little more pragmatic. Like, what is it we can do to actually make a difference? Well, one is you can get educated, and hopefully some of this other information is making you feel a little more comfortable with that. Two, we're going to give you some concrete things that you can take with you. So I suspect one of the things that you're not very comfortable, you may not be very comfortable with yet, is what if somebody wants to know about the tax credit program, justify it, or they're attacking it? Have you ever been in one of those situations? Hands up. A little bit, not so much. Okay. So we want to give you some very basic speaking points, guys. We'll start off small. We've got them here for you, all right? We want to get you to the point where you're kind of comfortable reaching out to your legislators. And I'm going to give you a couple things there. We'd really love to start seeing some school visits, some tours given, okay? We'll talk about Thursday. Okay. I already toured her down. You don't need to, so there you go. Took one for the teacher. So we got a school visit guide, and then if I can get this internet to work, I'm going to show you a couple things on social media that are already being done that all you'd have to do is like, retweet, that. Okay, so you don't have to create anything, or unless you want to add a comment or something, okay? So let's start with the first one. So if you pull out the speaking points there, I think it's, is it in yours? I hope it is. Oh, there we go. So guys, these are very simple points, I understand. But I wanted you to understand the purpose there. So first of all, we're not asking you to write a dissertation on this. We're asking for 45 seconds. You have to talk to a parent or someone. And one of the things I want you to realize before we get to the end is, it's perfectly defined to say, you know, I'm a much better principal than I am a politician. This is what I know about the program, and it's good for our neediest families. Okay, that's always now. Or I can find somebody who should answer those questions. That's absolutely fine. But we want to make sure that our audiences are aware of this. Like I talked about that parent sent me an email that wasn't too happy that I was advocating for this. We've got to make sure our parents start to feel more and more comfortable about this, and that it's an acceptable and positive thing. All right? So that's one. We want to make sure that we get them out talking to politicians at some point. This may take some time, okay? But what we wanted you to know on those speaking points really are those bottom three things. So school choice programs in Iowa have existed for over 12 years, and that over 1,500 students in our diocese receive those. We wanted to add, and they're some of the neediest families in the state. That's true. All right? If that's something to tell them. Help school choice grow in Iowa. You can say there's a growing movement to increase school choice options so all families can select the best educational setting for their family, regardless of zip code or income level. Those are probably your two, because what's your stereotypes of politicians? Because we talked about that already, right? If you have money, you're typically able to pick up.
Choosers, and then do whatever will let the biggest group of people they think.
Sometimes you don't live in the biggest group of people. I'm here to tell you that when I was a principal and somebody said to me, you should go talk to a city council member, I didn't do it. I was scared to death. Like, what am I going to say to this guy? I don't know what I'm talking about. And then when I was thrust in the superintendent's role there, I figured I have to do this, start talking. What you quickly find out is, A, they work for you. And they know it. And they're 98% of the time super nice to you. Okay? So you don't need to be scared at all. They bend over backwards typically to be nice to you. They realize you're a community leader. You have X number of families in your school. And they all listen to you. They want you to have an opinion of them. All right? So they will answer your phone calls and emails, especially for a tour. All right? So knowing these basic things, it gives you some credit. Who always talks about Ellen Stemler and STEM? I go to these meetings. All I hear is Ellen Stemler and STEM. Ellen Stemler. Governor Reynolds is in love with Ellen Stemler. I go to these meetings and she brings that up all the time. I'm St. Teresa's. Okay? So I like to tease you a little bit on that. But it's true, right? In other words, it's worked in two ways. What's the governor push?
STEM.
Workforce awareness, STEM.
Mm-hmm.
You're a good example. And by the way, oh yeah, I also get a say I did something positive for the Catholics, right? Check, check. All right? So they want to deal with you. They are, and the other thing is we don't have really professional politicians. You go to California, it's year round. All right? This is a citizen group. They're only here for a couple months. They're still farming. They're still lawyers. We start late on Monday and we don't meet on Friday. So they can go home and catch up. So it's much closer to the ground, guys. I'll give you again. $20,000 in Iowa politics is a big deal. It isn't in California. All right, so we're very much closer to the ground. So they will answer and they will respond. They will come to do a tour. All right, I almost guarantee it. All right? So what we would like you to do then is contact your legislature. So this isn't going to work, is it? Okay. We had a link in here. Holy smokes, it worked. Okay, this is a website that I'd like you to be familiar with. And if you can't see it, all you got to do is you Google Find My Legislature, Iowa. But it's www.iowa.gov/legislators/fund. And basically what you do is you put in your address of your school, and it's going to tell you who your representatives and your senators are. It's really that simple. I believe it will also give you their email address and their phone numbers. I'm almost 100% positive. So it's an easy way to find them. All of your legislators have 2 emails, for sure. Their official state one, they're issued, you have no choice. And they'll be good about answering that in the session. And a lot of them will list their second, more regular email that they get on the weekend or in June, you know, when they're not in session. So depending on when you're doing this, you may want to send it to both, or you may want to call. Some put their cell phones on there. So that gives you a clue. They want to respond to people because they want to get reelected. All right? So this is how you find them. Now I wonder how to get back. Wow, that was great. Okay, so the other thing we'd really like you to look at doing is setting up a tour for them to come through. And we've given you this handout as kind of a guideline. All right? So, a tour with a legislator, what would we do? What would we talk about? What I came to find was, do you kind of have a set tour you give a prospective parent? And on that, you tell them about the best qualities of your school. It's a similar tour, all right? Because we want them to learn about the great things that are happening at every one of your schools. Who gives the tour? Who needs to be there? It says in here, for example, well, no more than 8 to 10. Quite frankly, that's probably even big. Okay? But I'm going to tell you some of the people I think should be there. You have to be there. You are a community leader. They will register with you. They'll reference that they were at your school and talk to you. If your pastor is the right pastor, have him there. If he's not going to add anything to it, don't have him there. I leave that up to you. I had some that were great, and some I didn't buy. All right. Okay. Basically then, we're going to take that sample email, which you have there. All right, we gave you text you can use. All right, on the other page. You're going to get an invitation out to them. And you're going to say, basically, you want to shoot this out for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Say, if you could come in that week. Because they get booked up pretty far out. Because then you've already had to, in the background, say, I got to be ready. The school's got to be clean. All right. I should probably really get a CTO recipient there. Okay. Are you made aware of who your CTO recipients are? Okay, good. So I hope you know them well enough to figure out. They don't have to be the most articulate person in a room. Quite frankly, in my work, especially with the Democrats, are Hispanics, non-English speakers, make a great impression. Have an interpreter there if you can. It's wonderful. And I will tell you this, I did this at Dowling, and it was, who was it, Malloy? What was his name?
Dan.
Yeah, you know.
Dan Malloy.
So he came out, he was the only Democrat I could get to come. And when I walked him in,
Oh,
did the
McCoy,
tour,
Matt McCoy.
showed him around the building, it was basically me, maybe one other person, and I had 7 sets of parents, or some are just one parent, in there. And 3/4 could not speak English well. And it blew his socks off. He wanted his picture taken on, and he said, he's a Dowling grad, and his exact words were, I had no idea Dowling was like this now. I've been on 30 school tours, guys, in Sioux City and other places. Sacred Heart in Sioux City. My wife worked there, 35% Hispanic. Right? Brought in a guy, Lutheran guy, had no experience, got out of school, went through the whole thing, got out in the parking lot, he just looked at me and goes, I had no idea. Literally exactly his words. Okay. So this is the other thing about doing a school tour. Rich, white school. That's what they think. Dowling's a rich, white school. It's not. We have the wealthiest, we have the poorest. We're here for all. But they don't know that until we tell them. So that's where we really got to start to advocate giving the building. You have beautiful children, you have beautiful families, you have beautiful facilities. Bring them in, let them see what you're doing. Hit those highlights, okay? You do the tour, you get them in. There's a few speaking points in here. And that's kind of this section right here. Have a plan. What are we asking for, guys? What's our priority this year?
20 million.
Well, more specific to school choice.
CTO increase.
CTO increase, how much?
What goes on?
No, 2 million, come on. We're swinging for
20.
Our goal, our legislative priority is to raise that to 25 million. Why is that?
So get 20.
So it's 20.
Well, don't tell them.
Well, no.
Okay.
So then that will be
But why do you need the money?
to support our families mostly.
Right. In other words, most of our families have a big unmet need. See what I'm saying? I can say that. Our current families that are coming here are short $600,000. And that's considering we're giving out $1.4 million in Dowling dollars. That's another thing to throw in. If your school's giving out additional assistance or writing it off, tell them that. We're sacrificing. Catholic Church has a long tradition of supporting the neediest members of the community. Not often given credit for that. You have to point it out. Okay? But it gives you some ideas of things you can do. But one of the things that doesn't happen a lot of times on tours is stop talking and make them talk. It's like the kid in trouble, right? How do you just shut up and stare at it? What can you do to support us? Stop. Throw everything to the floor. Stop talking and make them talk about it. And they will tell you very quickly if they voted for the bill and passed. In the past, I voted for this 2 to 3 times. I'm supportive of this. Okay? But let them tell you where they're at. It doesn't, if they tell you I'm not in support of this program, that's fine. Don't argue with them. That's not the point. The point is they realize there's people in the community who took enough time to write an email, get 3 or 4 people in a room, and sit down with them. And what does that mean? That means, one, realize we have a great mission. We have a great mission, and we're helping Iowa tremendously, and we have for over 100 years. 2, there's people who will go vote with us. You don't need to say it. They know it. All right? So by bringing them in, that really starts to get that message across to them. All right? They just need to hear it. Because when the bills come up, what are they going to remember? They're going to remember your face in Fully Trinity. They're going to remember your school. They're going to remember that I had no idea there was 27% diversity at Dowling Catholic High School.
Hopefully they'll remember the face of the kids.
Yeah. Okay. So when I get Democrats to come in, I can't remember the one, well, not Claire, I'll write Claire for too, but the one who's a professor at Drake, kind of over in your area. She's the representative there. She came in, she was running for office, talked about it. She didn't, was that? No, Connecticut or something like that, doesn't matter. She's like, I'm a Democrat, I do like education, I don't know a lot about Catholic schools, but I appreciate the opportunity to come in. When I emailed her then, during the session, can't remember, I think it was such an easy thing that she was able to vote for it. And so when I sent her a thank you, she responded very quickly. Okay, those sorts of things. Yeah, I did vote for you. But again, that just kind of greases the skids and gets them going there. Okay? So, questions about a school visit? What would make you nervous? Are you comfortable with that? Have you done them, Ellen? Okay, I kind of assumed you had. Do you have anything you want to add? You've done some too? You guys have things you want to add about what worked or didn't work?
They're just regular people.
Yeah.
And really what you want to do is you want to showcase your kids in your school. Talk to them, how is it, if it's in session, how is the session going? I can ask questions about, we had contact with so-and-so who's a lobbyist or somewhere, and just bring up those connections.
Now, do you do it during, if you're showcasing your STEM activities or just anytime?
Anytime. Okay. And then there's a couple of projects and step into school.
Yeah. So you just invite them anytime and doesn't have to be that you're doing something?
Yes.
Mine, they all just come on a regular day.
Oh, yeah. Kids being there is awesome. Definitely.
They don't like.
And some of them want to get involved with what the kids are doing.
Well, you give them those opportunities. Like we do, like the STEM festival, we always invite the governor and lots of people there, but just a regular day for them to see that and to see what the kids are able to do is really impactful because these are islands sitting there in those classrooms.
Ours will, once in a while now, will come to like a spaghetti supper or something, just one of them, he will, but now that he's got a connection with the school.
Invite them to events in the parish, invite them to events in the school. Just start to build a relationship.
There's a reason when you have an event with politicians, there was an announcement. Because they want everybody to know who, they want to recognize who they are and that they show up. That's why they stand up. Okay. But yeah, what I'm asking you to consider, and I'll follow up more on an individual basis, is if you consider trying to do this before January. Okay. And if you do it, let us know. And then if they say anything in particular, let us know that. What we're starting to do more and more is write it down, share it with the lobbyist, okay. Share it with that coalition. You got 3 or 4 different lobbyists running around up on the hill who all have different friends and enemies. They need to know, it's like intelligence, okay? What are they saying? Why not? Those sorts of things. If you have somebody that has a particular relationship with Pat Grassley, new speaker down, we want to know, okay, who can get in to see him, those sorts of things. Those are the little details that start to add up.
So do we have a contest to see who can get in first?
Sure. Prizes include cookies. But that's what we're trying to shoot for. So I'll follow up with you individually, but are there some other things that we didn't provide that maybe you need?
Contact with Tom Chapman, Ohio Catholic Conference.
It is on the bottom of that school guide. That's the
Okay.
one that I brought with me. Flip over to the back. There's a couple names on there. Trish Wilder's name's on there too.
Trish is wonderful to work with.
Yeah. So we can work with them and do that. One last thing I should probably say about that tour, send a thank you. And if they didn't, which I'd be stunned, if they didn't take a picture of themselves with the kids, take one for them. Because they're putting it out on social media before they leave the parking lot. All right? And it doesn't hurt that you do it either. Now, I will tell you that when you post, if you post pictures with politicians, it's a double-edged sword. Okay? You get a far-right Republican, you get a left or a Democrat, you know what I'm saying? Somebody's going to complain. Yeah, but, you know, I personally, with a few exceptions, would say you want to let those things definitely go out, right? Because they definitely work. So do make sure your kids have given you permission to use their photos.
Well, now, if you want to share about your population, with political things.
You might know him, but which one?
That there's a lot of buyback and
Yeah.
politically.
Against,
Anything.
Yes,
oh, anything political?
when we vote, it's always,
Well,
we stop.
I stay away from politics, totally, unless it's school choice. So by
Oh, yeah,
another,
we don't know.
yeah.
But even that, I mean,
Well, that's where we probably need to keep doing more education with our own parents, because they haven't been informed on church's standing. They may not understand what this is allowing to happen. And the backup thing I'd always bring is, the more kids you have in the seats, the cheaper your tuition is going to be down the road for us. It's going to help decrease the increases, if that makes sense.